Stop sharing, Jack.
Oh, that was by our beloved UU hymnodist, Jim Scott. Words and lyrics.
Stop your share, Jack.
Oh, is that what the problem is?
Yep.
There we go. I'm sorry, people. Now it's time for announcements. Friday, September 6th is our next monthly board meeting at 2 p.m. Central Time, open to all. And don't forget the NAUA, the Nawa Clergy Support Group, which meets tomorrow at noon Central Time. And our next Vesper service, September 18th at 7. Are there any more announcements?
Well, I could read this one myself if you want. Since it's me.
Go ahead.
Yes, next month's service will not be on July 17. It will be on September 18th. And whoops, we lost the screen share. Can you put that back up, Richard? The slide?
I fixed it.
Yeah, but now we're not seeing it.
Okay, here it is.
Right. So it's called Love Me, I'm a Liberal. Some of you may remember that's a song that Phil Oakes sang. And there's the description. Our democratic republic and the freedoms it affords are under existential threat. This country was founded on liberal ideals, but are today's liberals and liberal religion as we have known it part of the problem, or might they represent the best solution? I myself will examine this question through the lens of my experience in behavioral and cognitive science, politics, and more recently, preaching in what I had thought was Unitarian Universalism. I hope you'll join us. It'll be a wonderful thing. And of course, lively discussion will follow. Thank you.
UMIAC will be holding a convocation on October 5th at 11 o'clock Central Time. So that's noon Eastern, 9 Pacific. June's Watershed General Assembly has made us re-examine our mission, and we need help to discern the way forward. It'll last about an hour and a half. Also, we've recently published a book. It's articles from the first 7 years of our journal, The Arrow.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any more announcements? Well, hearing one, we'll have our chalice lighting. Hearing none. And now as Richard kindles our flame, may it symbolize for us the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. It is the mission of the Unitarian Universalist Multiracial Unity Action Council to carry out and foster anti-racist and multiracial unity activities, both within and outside the Unitarian Universalist Association, through education, bearing witness, and other actions, and expansion of our membership both within and outside the walls of our congregations. We also seek to defend our UU principles against those who would undermine them. Our vision: we envision our congregations, denomination, and society as being not colorblind, but color appreciative, as judging and treating members of the world's rank and file by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or their cultural heritage, and as treasuring diversity in the context of the beloved community. We We call this vision multiracial Unitarian Universalism. And now, barring any more glitches, we'll have a musical interlude. And I need to do screen share. My reading this evening is from an article by Professor of International Relations and Political Science at St. Thomas University in Canada, Sean Nareen. Hamas launched a brutal attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. But one war crime shouldn't justify another. What Israel has done to Gaza in response is exponentially worse in terms of the loss of human life and the widespread infliction of human suffering. Israel is using starvation, dehydration, and disease as weapons of war against a captive population of 2.3 million people, half of whom are children. American public health researcher Devi Sridhar projects that 500,000 Palestinians may die of preventable diseases in 2024 if the war continues. More than 400,000 Gazans are experiencing severe hunger now, with the entire population at risk of famine. Rates of diarrhea in children under 4 are 100 times the norm. Israel is indiscriminately bombing civilians with an intensity not seen since the Second World War. It's destroyed more than 70% of the homes in Gaza and has bombed areas that it declared safe for refugees. Gaza's healthcare system has collapsed. Children's limbs are being amputated, and pregnant women are enduring cesarean sections without anesthetic. On average, Israel is killing 160 civilians a day, including journalists. and the cultural and intellectual elites of Gaza are being targeted. This list of atrocities goes on and on. International aid workers say Israel's attack on Gaza is the worst situation they have ever seen. And by the way, if there's one, I hesitate to say bright spot in this, it's that at 160 a day, it would take 45 years to kill them all. Now let us have 2 minutes of meditation to ready our minds for this evening's meeting. Dear friends, are the Abrahamic faiths dead? That might seem like a rather stupid question, since Catholicism claims 1.2 billion adherents, Protestantism another 500 million, Islam over 1 billion, and tiny little Judaism holding its own in the US and Israel and around the world with a total of perhaps 15 million people. All these people profess their faiths, and if their religions are dead, well, somebody forgot to tell them. So it would seem. Maybe that's why zombie dramas have become so popular in our time. Armies of the undead roaming the land, representing in fiction the true spiritual state of nearly half the world's population. Grunting and clawing, hungry for a meal and nearly unstoppable, our collective consciousness suggests to the imagination a plotline that embodies a state of affairs we haven't yet perceived, but are part and parcel of. To judge by buildings maintained and monies raised, these religions seem to be doing all right. There are now churches and mosques going up all the time. Can 3.5 billion believers be wrong? That's a rhetorical question. Let's ask a direct one. What is religion? And what is it for? I'd like to have a little audience participation. Some of you volunteer to unmute and answer that question. What is religion? And what is it for? Alan?
Yeah, I'd say that religion tries to answer questions about, what is the meaning of our lives and how can we best use those lives to advance, if you might want to say, the world around us or the universe around us during that period when we have these lives. So I think that's the purpose. And people understand how that's communicated to us in different ways, different religions, and within religions, different people understand how that religious meaning is understood, becomes to be understood, it varies a lot. So, and for me.
Anybody else? Raise hand or just unmute.
All right, I'll take a whack at it if that's
Go ahead. Go ahead, Matthew, please.
Two quick things. One is Reverend Maddie C. Fontus once wrote, she was quoting James Luther Adams, who talked about, he used the terms intimacy and ultimacy. And I like that's a nice pairing of words. My terms that I came up with, it's to provide both solace and inspiration. And by the way, solace doesn't mean solitude, but it's a great word. So that's my contribution. Thanks.
Very good, thank you. Craig Morrow, how about you?
Thanks for asking. I think my picture will pop up in a second. There we go. Thanks for asking. I would say religion is a process of gathering, counting, measuring, and sorting in community with a great aesthetic and emotional awareness. I'll leave it at that.
Very interesting. Yes,
Yeah.
Anne.
Yeah, so I think religion is an institutionalized practice of a specific belief system or spirituality. So, it's not the spirituality itself, but it's the kind of institutionalized, aggregate practice of a spirituality or belief system.
Very interesting. Richard.
It's something that calls us back to what's most important. It keeps calling our attention back to what's most important.
Very good. Well, I thank you all. So, what is our purpose? The meaning of our lives? Intimacy and ultimacy, solace and inspiration, gathering, counting, measuring, sorting in community, a system of spirituality. It calls us back to what's most important. Religion is a body of practices and rituals that affirm core beliefs. It functions to cement a people together and facilitate their spiritual growth. People grow in multiple ways as they age. Physically, of course. Intellectually, schools help with that. Socially, that's society's job. Characterologically, also called maturing. And finally, spiritually, what religion affords. And if we do it right, religion helps us grow, behaviorally, morally, increasingly we are better persons than we were before. This is due to the activities of self-examination, reflection, and even repentance, in which religion encourages us. Most of us have had personal experiences that bear this out, have we not? It feels very familiar. So, given that religion is a force for growth, and it has been adapted in one form or another by adopted by most, if not all, of the human race, then we ought to have a worldwide society that approximates heaven on earth, right? The problem with that logic is that it presumes society uses religion exclusively or predominantly for the betterment of individual adherents and the gradual and inexorable improvement in the condition of the race as a whole. But of course, no such thing is true. And far from being a force for good in the world, religion has all too often been a force for evil, or at least impotent in the face of humankind's ever-present lust to do evil. Domination, oppression, self-aggrandizement, criminality, totalitarianism, these characteristic expressions of human nature have often been abetted by, rather than ameliorated by, religion. People have sought the power that comes with controlling and directing religion while not taking seriously its strictures against doing harm and favoring virtue. Sell all you have and come, follow me. Can you point to a single human being out of nearly 2 billion Christians who has followed Jesus' admonition? I doubt it. And the rich young man went away disappointed, for he had great possessions, or indeed any possessions. By contrast, what is the purpose of history? What is history for? Why, nothing less than telling the ongoing story of the human enterprise and laying bare the truth about what has happened, who has done what to whom, and how what we call justice has so often been buried under human greed, avarice, lust for power, and riches. If we cast a dispassionate eye upon the march of Christianity in the world, we see that this upstart Jewish cult allied itself early on with the acquirers, the dominators, the conquerors. It has spent nearly 2 millennia making miserable the lives of those it enrolls or controls. Think of the domination of the peasants of Europe, the unbelievable violence unleashed upon the natives of the Western Hemisphere, the soul-shattering horror of the Holocaust. But, some object, Christianity has so often been a force for good in the world. It has accomplished this and that, and they point to its good works, such as wonderful music and architecture, literature, and art. My friends, if a man lives a blameless life, does good works, is a credit to his community, but then breaks under the weight of pent-up anger or unhappiness, and strangles his pregnant wife, killing both mother and child. This case was just in the news last week. Do we say, oh, but he did so many marvelous things, he was such a positive force in his town? No, we sentence him to life in prison or perhaps even to death, because we do not tolerate such acts in our society. Why then would we be more forgiving of an entire religion whose history brims with what one of my high school teachers loved to call man's inhumanity to man? Can we trust Christianity to reconcile warring nations, to bring peace and love to plant hatred, to change the course of entire civilizations, to enshrine individual freedom, self-expression, personal choice? No, we cannot. It never has, and it never will. It is a dead letter. And those who promote it support a zombie morality, the walking dead babbling about love and salvation. Meaningless. Well, how about Islam? It's the second most practiced religion on earth and asks its adherents to pray to God not just once or twice, but 5 times a day, every day. Surely Islam must be a force for good. Did it not, in fact, keep science and the humanities alive during the Dark Ages and spread its reign throughout much of the world? Well, it surely did. And you know its history. Murder and plunder and oppression. Think of the Moors in Europe. Think of Saudi Arabia today. Think of the Taliban in Afghanistan. Where Islam has held sway, it has ultimately brought not peace and freedom, but oppression and suffering in the name of an all-powerful God. And it brooks no questioning, no dissent. Think of the fatwa against the famous author. It too is a dead letter. All right, then how about the original Abrahamic faith? How about Judaism? Has it not produced a people who have proved able to survive the most hard persecutions, fit in the world over, produced remarkable achievements that have advanced humankind? Did you know, for example, that 25% of the Nobel Prizes have been awarded to Jews? Do you know how many have been awarded to Muslims? 1. Has it not made the desert bloom and brought prosperity to the children of victims? Yes, yes it has. It has done all that and more. I used to be proud to be a Jew. But in its promised land, the land of Israel, it has set up an apartheid state, taught its children to hate their Arab cousins, uprooted hundreds of thousands from their homes, and is right now busy bombing 2 million of them into a slow and torturous oblivion with the help and succor of the United States and, can one believe it, Germany and France. I am no longer proud. I am ashamed. Do you not watch the news reports day after day about yet another Israeli bombing, killing whole families, innocent babies, sometimes dozens at once? Secretary of State Blinken reports that he has talked with Netanyahu, or Secretary of Defense Austin with his counterpart Yoav Gallant, and told them they must do more to reduce civilian casualties, protect the populace. But the Israelis laugh at them behind their backs, because maximizing civilian casualties is the point. At least 10 dozen a day dead since October 7, and more dead beneath the rubble or from injury and disease, and many tens of thousands more injured. Israeli soldiers have admitted to interviewers that they sometimes shoot people simply because they're bored. Can it be a mistake that over 100 Palestinian journalists have been killed despite wearing vests, displaying press in large bold letters? Can it be a mistake that more than 200 employees of UNRWA, the sole relief agency operating there, have died? Over 200. Obviously targeted. And don't tell me I'm anti-Semitic. I'm bar mitzvah and confirmed and a former Midwest regional coordinator of the American Jewish Committee. Whom are we to believe? Netanyahu and Gallant, or our lying eyes? What's occurring in Gaza is a slow motion Auschwitz. And the new Hitler and Himmler thumb their noses at the world. Where is the vaunted Jewish morality, the compassion, the regard for the stranger? Leviticus 19, verse 18. Love your neighbor as yourself. Didn't take long to bury that, did it? So Judaism too is a dead letter. And in the United States, For every mealy-mouthed evangelical fraud who supports Donald Trump, there's a Sheldon Adelson who has showered him with millions of dollars, or an IPAC which routinely opposes any politician who dares to criticize Israel. Have you watched the news reports from the Middle East? Have you seen what the descendants of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob have been doing to their Islamic siblings? Have you digested the words of hatred from the mouths of Israel's so-called leaders, who have promised the extermination of the people they regard as a variety of rat? This from the inheritors of Judaism, the heads of the world's only Jewish state. No, truly, the Abrahamic faiths are dead. They may have created much beauty and inspiration, but they have failed to lift humanity from the track of mutual suspicion, hatred, and the lust for violence, power, and riches, a track which leads inexorably to our extinction. As we contemplate the prospect of our onrushing obliteration, can we rely on Christianity, Islam, or Judaism to show us the way back from the precipice? My friends, we cannot. We need a new solution. And what will that be? Will it be one of the world's other faiths? Hinduism, Buddhism, Sufism? Will it be a newfangled religion such as Unitarian Universalism or humanism? Frankly, I don't know. In case you hadn't realized it, this is not a feel-good sermon. There is no simple solution to humanity's present crisis. If there were, we'd have it. But I don't have the answer. If I did, I'd be the head of the UN or the US or JP Morgan Chase. But I'm not. I'm just another human being like you, walking the earth in bewilderment, wondering how our forebears could have left us in this predicament, seeking a path that leads through uncertainty to some sort of human future. Right now, I'd settle for just about any form of human future, because the time is late. And with nuclear powers acting belligerent and global warming threatening us literally with extinction, we desperately need a morality to guide us on a path to survival. For as the great Unitarian scholar and humorist Lawrence Peter put it, in the immediate future, the cost of living is going to go up, but the odds of living are going to go down. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
We came into existence, at least on the national level, to fight the ideology, the racial justice ideology that the current UUA officials, also officials of the UU Ministers Association, used as a wedge issue to gain power and to pervert Unitarian Universalism nationally into what has happened to it. We came into existence to fight that. We may still have a role in this or in other ways. We're not sure. Come to our convocation on October 5th. Help us decide. And do check us out. Go to our website, uumuac.org, uumuac.org.
Thank you, Richard. And now a closing hymn. It's number 318 in the hymnal, We Would Be One, and there are lyrics on the screen in case you would like to sing along. Okay, is that it? I don't think that's it. Our service is ending. As we extinguish the chalice, symbol of our faith, we recall the words of the late Reverend Elizabeth Sully Jones. Now we extinguish our chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now, the floor is open for conversation. Please use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen if you wish to be called on. Find it under More. We'll keep recording so that viewers may see and hear our discussion. So if you don't want to be recorded, don't speak. And thank you for coming. The floor is open.
Well, I see my hand up first, so I'll just start speaking, I guess.
Go ahead, Matthew.
I'm glad that I volunteered to do our next month's service. It'll be a nice counterpoint to Jack. I am preaching hopefulness and a positivity, and but it's going to be in defense of what many of us thought Unitarian Universalism would provide us, and which those of us who gather here seek to keep going, despite what the as some of my friends say, what they're doing in Boston, which I kind of have trouble with since I live near Boston, but don't want to be tarred with that brush. But really, so please do come. You know, this is perhaps stirred the pot. That's good, and then we're going to come and we're going to give you hope. I'll bring you hope where hope is hard to find. Bring you hope. You still got to take it. Thank you very much. I will now lower my hand.
David, welcome.
Thank you. So I think I'm seeing a parallel to how how we're dealing with our UU faith in a similarity down here in Florida at the University of Florida. They had the head of the university resigned after 17 months. And he was appointed by our governor, Ron DeSantis, and he had never had prior experience running a large university. But when he came here, he increased the expenditures, hiring contracting firms and also people filling the positions, doing it remotely. And he said, well, this is, if you want a quality operation, you have to spend money. But it felt very underhanded how he was doing things. It seemed like he was reinforcing his own cronies from Nebraska, where he came from. And I see a parallel, because I think in the UUA, what we're seeing is a lot of things done remotely. Now, granted, we couldn't have this gathering here if we didn't have a vehicle to do this remotely. But I also see it used in a wrong way when people have bad intent. The other thing that I want to suggest for the people that are in a UU fellowship where they feel like there's some persecution if you're going against the UUA, I'm rather cautious, but I'm having a watch party for the NAUA summit in October, and I will publish that in our local gazette and have people come out and just learn for themselves what is going on, rather than me trying to convince people one by one. That's it. Thank you.
Good, Mike. You're muted, Mike.
Sorry about that. Thanks for doing the service, Jack. I can't help myself, though, but call you out a little bit. And I'm nothing more than an American Gentile that grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. I'm not a ethnic Jew like you are. I've never practiced, I've been to temple and synagogue many times with Jewish friends because I refused to go to the Lutheran church that I was brought up in. So at the age of 15, my mother insisted I go somewhere, and I think I chose to go with my Jewish buddy just to piss her off. She was a bit anti-Semitic, but anyway. But my question to you is, and I don't mean this with anger or anything else, but you're in Illinois, I'm in Washington State. I think you used to live in California, but we're having these discussions and we're calling out the Israelis. But if you lived in one of the little kibbutzes on the border of Gaza and something happened to one of your neighbors or one of your relatives last October, how would you feel in that case if you weren't in the relative security of being in the center of the United States? Never mind the religion that you used to practice and that you now practice, or how would you feel? I know how I'd feel, and I'd feel that the Israelis have every right to defend themselves in any way they see fit until they reach an agreement with Hamas. And they aren't the bad guys in all of this. Hamas is. And Hamas was elected by the civilians in the Gaza Strip. But I'd love to know how you think about that if you were, instead of being in DeKalb, Illinois, and you were in one of those little towns on the border with Gaza, how would you feel about the war that's going on there?
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to let that stand as a rhetorical question because there are hands up who haven't spoken. I have Julie.
Unmute. Okay. One possible solution to the kind of problems that happen in societies and governments is in a book that came out a couple of years ago. It's by a political scientist, and I put it in the chat. It's called Corruptible: Who Gets Power and How It Changes Us by Brian Klaas. And basically what it says is there are some very problematic personality types. There might be more than the few he lists and lists solutions for, but there are definitely some basic problematic personality types that should not be let anywhere near power or government, and that would take care of a lot of the world's ills. One of the solutions he suggest is something called sortition, which is like a lottery to determine who would be the head of government. And people laugh at that and think that's ridiculous. People have to be qualified, people have to campaign. But just think about it. If there had been sort of a lottery to see who came to be US president in 2016, what are the chances we would have gotten a personality as destructive as Trump? What are the chances in Russia with Putin? What are the chances in Israel with Netanyahu? Very, very tiny chances. So I think it's definitely a good book and worth reading, Corruptible by Brian Klaas. I also put an article in there in the chat called Disenshittify or Die, and it's about solutions to problems in companies where the company gets destroyed by vulture capitalists, basically. And the solutions offered are things like anti-monopoly legislation. And so different solutions would be needed for nonprofits, like the UU Religion, for example. But I think some of the descriptions of the problem of enshittification would apply and might lead to nonprofit types of solutions for that problem.
Thank you, Julie. Mona Lee, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
No?
Yep.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Well, anyway, I just want to very much disagree with Mike. I think that the Palestinians have been under the thumb of Israel for decades. since 1948 and have kind of lived in a concentration camp in a way by Israeli making, and the fact that they responded by an attack, well, that's not excusable, but it's understandable to me. And what the Israelis are doing now, bombing and killing tens of thousands of people, is just inexcusable. I don't think we can justify anything. And that has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It just has to do with my sense of how human beings should treat one another. That's my opinion. That's all.
Thank you. Bobby?
Jack, I heard incredible pain in your presentation. I think that we need to remember, or at least I'd like to propose, that it's not religions that generate these conflicts, it's politics. And at this point in time, it's worldwide capitalism that generate the issues. And religions all over the world have been used to support those conflicts. I really think the UUA was targeted. If you were trying to control society and you had a group of people that said they believed in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, with the goal of world community with peace, justice, and liberty for all, I think you would suspect that you might not trust that group. So I think we were targeted from outside. I think the way in which religion has been manipulated to support conflicts all around the world, I think all of these manipulations have been based on racism, trying to pit one group of people against the other. But in so doing, you've got to remember that not all Israelis support Netanyahu any more than all Palestinians support Hamas, any more than we support whoever is up there or support the UUA. So when we try to figure out what it is we're going to do, I think fighting racism and fighting it on the basis of multiracial unity is right on target.
Thank you, Bobby. Julie?
You skipped Ellen.
Ellen, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead, Ellen. Ellen LaRue, you'll have to unmute.
Hi. Yeah, I hope I don't drop out. There's something is wrong with my connection. I got two things to say. One is, so far as the pessimism of the sermon, I am naturally disposed to be aligned with it. That's my natural instinct, is to be pessimistic and doom and gloom and all that kind of stuff. But I also have a tendency to resist and say, well, we might be doomed, but what do we got to keep going, So I actually think that, the human beings have both good and bad in them, and the groupings of humans that's probably multiplied by millions, and we live by like we sort of are in a state of maybe resonance, or at least back and forth, try it and correct. And so I just think it's just how it is. We're going to do bad things, and then we'll try to fix it and do better. And that's kind of how it works. At least that's kind of what I see. Anyway, the other thing is Israel and Hamas. I agree with Bobby that not all Israelis support the war that in the way that it's being conducted, and I would say that it's a big mistake to not also hold Hamas liable for the killings. If Hamas would just say, okay, let's collect all the leaders and we'll walk out across the border and turn ourselves in, the war would be over. So I think there's more than just Israel that's at fault here. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ellen. Julie, you've got your hand up.
Yes. I did want to point out that I'd forgotten to that the solution of sortition, like a lottery to choose leaders, we've done much, much better in Gaza too. I mean, there's almost no chance, but that getting a leader by sortition rather than election would have gotten somebody as crazy as whoever is the head of Hamas, just like they would have gotten somebody as crazy as Netanyahu. And I think a big problem in trying to solve the problems for humans is we. People think, well, all the humans have to do X, but no, different people have to do different things, and some people have to be kept away from power. That book that I cited by Brian Klaas in the chat, Corruptible, Who Gets Power and How It Changes Us. He talked to people from all over the world about regimes of power all over the world, some constructive, some very destructive, and found that there were certain kinds of people that got into power, did almost all the destruction. You keep those people out and you're good. And the types he talks about were paranoids, who, when they become leaders, spend all their time fighting imaginary problems, malignant narcissists who, when they get power, spend all the time trying to do good things for me, and forget about the place they're supposedly governing, and then psychopaths that were just this outright the most destructive of all, just destroy everything in their path of getting what they want. And so if those types can be kept out of power, I do think he's right, that's political scientists that did the study, that humankind would be a whole lot better off.
Thank you, Julie. Ann? Unmute.
Yeah, so I want to tag on what Mike had said. So we as a country have been in a similar situation. We had 9/11 and we bombed the hell out of Afghanistan and killed a lot of women and children and caused starvation and made thousands homeless. I was always against the Afghan war, even though I personally knew people who experienced deep loss because of 9/11. Person I knew in seminary and a person I worked with lost family members. And I remember sitting with them in their grief. But I still felt it was disproportionate for us to be bombing a whole country. And then, of course, later we found out that it was mostly Saudi Arabia, at least the radicals of Saudi Arabia, that were responsible. And so it wasn't even Afghanistan, though Afghanistan was a failed state and kind of allowed this stuff to continue in their state, but they were a failed state, basically. And so it's easy in a failed state for, radicals of any sort to run rampant and take charge of things. So we were killing the wrong people. And I think that that's exactly kind of what's going on with the Jewish-Palestinian situation right now, is that this just mass killing instead of, if targeted killing, I probably would have supported with Afghanistan if we would have gone after bin Laden and gone after his crew. And I'm not opposed to self-defense, and so I'm not a pacifist. And so I would have supported that. But I never supported Afghanistan. And then when we went down the road and got involved in Iraq, that's when I put my body on the line and literally got arrested for civil disobedience and spent a day in jail and went to court 5 times and those kinds of things. Yeah, he was more of an accident, though. I was deliberately getting arrested. I actually committed a crime or 2 or 3 or 4. And fortunately, the charges were all dropped eventually, but I was willing to go to jail for those charges because I felt it was so wrong. So I find hope, though. The Democratic convention is going on practically in our yard. we're in Chicago, not really. They're 8 miles away. But the Democratic convention is going on, and every day, including right now at this moment, there are protests going on, and most of those protests are peaceful. They did arrest 70 people yesterday, only a handful of which probably did something to be arrested for. They did a mass arrest to try to put a damper on the situation and end the protest. And there was a young Jewish woman who was probably in her mid-20s. She was wearing her Star of David that was getting out of jail, and the media interviewed her. And she talked about how she wanted to go to jail for Palestine and through nonviolent civil disobedience because she felt that, you know, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, basically. And so, especially when you have this mass response. So that kind of stuff just really gives me hope. You know, it gives me hope that, you know, someone is listening to that other than me. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Dick?
Yeah, I think about all these wars and conflicts as, you know, they seem often, you know, crazy and pointless and, you know, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth kind of thing. But I think it helps tremendously to understand the history and background of these things, to know what's really going on. That's certainly true of what's going on in Gaza right now. This is not just an isolated thing. You know, it's Rashid Khalidi has a book on the 100-Year War against the Palestinians. I mean, Zionism has a very long history. And from the very beginning, the leaders knew that the Palestinians probably would not just walk away from their quest for a Jewish homeland. You know, people don't like to give up their property. And so you look at what happened in 1948, even that was a product of first a lot of support from the British Empire for Zionism, and then that was earlier, 20s, 30s, and then 40s, and then U.S. support for Zionism, and all of that ignoring the Palestinian people, thinking, well, yeah, the Jewish needs the homeland. And these Palestinians, well, they don't count for anything. It's a very colonial kind of thing, very imperial thing, just like when the Columbus all came to Latin America. You know, if we can take things over, we will, because they don't count. And I think that's the attitude that's still the dominant attitude right now behind Netanyahu and quite a few people in the United States too. Because this United States, this war would not be going on without the direct military aid to Israel. And many people regard Israel, in fact, as a client state of the United States. Some people even liken it to the 51st state because we put so much money in there, and we can talk about asking for a ceasefire, but it doesn't mean anything. And as long as we're paying for what's going on there, we actually are complicit, deliberately complicit in what's going on. And we have been since 1948, basically. And until you understand that, and the fact that the Palestinians don't like to be pushed aside like anyone else would, you're not going to solve it. Like you could say, like, yeah, Hamas could walk over and they could surrender. That wouldn't stop the war because that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is still going to be there after Hamas is long since gone. And it's just the problem is that there's this faction, the Zionist faction, wants to take over the entire country and push all the opposition out so they can have full sway. And we have to understand that. And some people in our government do, but they don't want to take the hard step of saying, withdrawing the aid, actually, saying no more money for this.
Thank you, Dick. Matthew?
Yes. I'm gonna channel a bit of Mike Slocum here and push back a bit. And I always appreciate Mike. He's not afraid to push back. Again, I didn't come here for a teach-in about the Israeli-Hamas conflict. And I don't regard that within the scope of a Vesper service. I used the term earlier, solace, and I want to just remind us what that word means. Comfort, consolation, cheer, support, relief. Like in a time of distress or sadness. Our hearts are breaking. It's hard to see these things happening. But, Dick said, we have to understand this. Well, how do you help people understand this? I say, first, you treat the wound. You have to stanch the bleeding when our hearts are breaking. Then the mind is open. But for here, I didn't come here to have this discussion about who's at fault, what's the problem, what's this, I get that plenty when I go into the political world. I appreciate us bringing this up. To me, I say we deal with it in an overtly religious context. That's my preference, and that's what I intend to do next month. But I'm going to take it to the other side of the coin. I'll bring you hope where hope is hard to find. So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Edith Van Cliff.
Just quickly, I'm going to say, for my long years of Unitarianism, I think anything goes, like for a Sunday morning sermon. I mean, I miss that, where we used to talk about science one week, or history another week, or art. And I think Jack's talk, to me, fit within that big, wonderful world where we used to have all kinds of things that we could talk about. So thank you, Jack.
And I appreciate your sermon, and I understand. I'm sure you feel very conflicted and upset.
Well, let me say, Julie, I see your hand is up. Let me get a word in edgewise, and then I'll call on you. I've been feeling out of sorts lately because I realized that at 77, I am much closer to the end of my life than to the beginning. And I've had to live my entire life in a country that has twisted its principles in order to empower the greedy and the unscrupulous, and live in a world that's crazy with war and violence, and live in a world which is endangering the survival of our own species with our profligate use of natural resources, our pollution, our generation of deadly greenhouse gases about which there isn't even unanimous agreement. And so it's the feeling of that although, Matthew, I'm grateful to have shared the planet with some really wonderful people. Think of all the people we revere in the arts and whose music we've been privileged to listen to, and whose books and articles we've read, and whose art we've seen. But at the same time, I've had to live on this crazy planet where justice is often thwarted and people are routinely taken advantage of, and we misuse our resources and our abilities. It's really, in a way, it's kind of depressing. So I'll look forward to your words of hope next month. I want to be cheered up. Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say that, to point out that the seeds of what happened in Boston to the Unitarian Universalist Association are still present in the dissenters groups. And we still have to deal with those if we don't want that to happen to us, to be splintered ourselves. And to remind people that what happened at UUA was a result of not following the first principle of UUism, not giving in, acknowledging inherent worth and dignity in every person and their perspectives. And now here we are at NAUA, and I know it would be more comfortable for some of us to say, oh, well, we shouldn't have somebody talk about this topic for a sermon, or we can't have anything about hearts breaking, about grief. That's negative. We have to go forward, and we can only go in ways that are positive and that aren't about grief and about hearts breaking. I know various people have different ideas of their, and I think it's important, though, in spite of those feelings we have, to try to find ways to include, not everything. I don't want a sermon on the benefits of Nazism, but to include as many perspectives and as many topics as possible, so that we're not making the same mistake of failing to include some people and causing a schism.
Is that you, Mike, with your hand up?
And also Matthew.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah.
I think Matt was ahead of me, Jack, but I'd
Yeah,
love
go
to
ahead.
speak up after him.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly respond to what Julie said. I'm not saying we can't bring up this topic. I think there's a way to bring it up within the scope of a gathering under the banner of religion rather than political science is all. I think there's a different approach that we take within religion to, again, to borrow from Mel Pine, as you know, he's shutting down the Truly Open Hearts and Minds website. But if we're to do that, to still live it, there's an approach we take. And all I'm saying is that the discussion has devolved into something that I think is more purely the way it's been conducted within the range of when people meet in a political group. And even then, I just say that I've been involved in that kind of politics for 15 years, and often that leads to the very schism that we're concerned about. I say when we do it here, again, I lean into the third principle, which of course we still adhere to, it's acceptance and encouragement to growth. It sounds like a paradox, but that's what we do. We resolve paradoxes here. That's all I'm trying to say. Of course, we need to discuss this. It's on our mind. It's everywhere, and it's messing with our heads. Here, we clear our heads. That's all I'm trying to say.
Mike?
Thanks for calling on me, Jack. I just wanted to commend Alan, and I forgot the name of the lady that's with him, but I just wanted to commend the two of you for putting yourselves on the line during the cooked up war with Iraq after we took action against Afghanistan. So you should be commended for that. And I'm right there with you. I'm probably a lot more hawkish than everybody in this discussion, probably, but I got a long military background, and I used to be an MP at a submarine base where I think Mona maybe used to protest. But anyway, just for the record, that goes back 30 some years, 35 years or something. But anyway, but thank you all.
She still does protest.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You reminded me that, Dick. Yeah, that's right. You guys had okay. Thank you for still doing so. We may disagree, but thanks for speaking up. But I just
I have a video of our most recent protest that I could send to Richard, and maybe he could send out to everybody.
Okay. I'd love to see it. I may disagree with it. As a matter of fact, I probably would. But
Nagasaki.
I'm in there too.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And Dick is in it too. Yeah.
Anyway, but to piggyback, and thank you for my buddy Matt who backed me up a little bit there. But I think part of the problem and why people are leaving the UU churches, whether it's UUA or NAUA, and thank God the NAUA was able to stand up, and hopefully they become an even larger and more going concern. I think it's a mistake to turn a religious organization into a political, civil rights, and environmental organization. I think that's a mistake. And there's nothing wrong with talking about climate change and what's going on in the world politically and talking about civil and human rights. I think those are all part of who we are as Unitarians. But if it replaces spirituality and religion and why we all come together and we have different beliefs, and I think that's a mistake. And I don't want to go into what's going on in our little white church in Blaine, who I officially resigned from a little over a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, because they made it clear that people like me weren't overly welcome there anymore, mainly because of what the UUA is insisting on. And they want to make the sorry Matt for bringing up the city of Boston again, but they wanted to make the folks back in Boston happy with how they recruit new members. And I said, well, in a place like Blaine, Washington, I think that's a mistake, because you have to draw on the people that are actually living in the area if you want to grow the church. And they didn't like that very much at all. And they wouldn't have felt that way 5 years ago, I can tell you that. Anyway.
It doesn't work here either, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I know that. You and I have talked about that. But anyway, thanks for having me, and thanks for listening to my sometimes compassionate and obnoxious comments or questions. So.
Sure. Thanks for sharing. Ellen? Can't hear you, Ellen.
Oh, I didn't know you said to go. Okay. I know before the fight about the principles and the values, it was frequently pointed out that the theology of UU is not, the 7 principles are not the theology. And it was never really clear to me what the theology was, although I was always kind of waiting for the explanation. But I think that we need to go forward and look to the actual theology that they used to say was the basis of our religion. Or maybe, well, anyway, that's what I think. And so I'm looking forward to I think the ministers who have studied theology may know something about that. We did, Bobby and I did organize a course at our church to look at the I guess theology, the multifaceted bases of UU theology. And that was quite interesting. We looked at different aspects and tried to find, things that were written in language that we could understand. And that was interesting. But I would like, I think there's more, I need a leader to sort of lead the way and explain some of these things. So I'm looking for a volunteer.
Good luck. Julie?
Yeah, I just want to say that, Matt, I'm intrigued by your idea that there are ways within a religion to discuss these topics that are different from the ways people usually discuss them when they're just talking about politics. And I look forward to whether you want to say anything about it here tonight or when you're speaking next time, what those ways are, because I think that it is crucial to discuss things in ways that are good for the community rather than destructive of a community. And I know that I have a lot of frustration. I'm on Twitter a lot and I see all those political discussions about Israel and Palestine. And I know that there are ways of recounting the history of Israel and Palestine. I mean, it's 70 something years plus, right? You can pull a lot of things out of there. So I'm very aware that some people will pull things out of the history to make Palestinians and Hamas maybe even look like innocence all the time, and like they're always the virtuous one. And the people on the other side on Twitter can pull things out of the history to make Israel look much, 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 much more virtuous than Gaza or the West Bank or anything. And I'm aware of these, and I see them all the time. And so to find when just one side of that is presented, there I do find a big imbalance.
Yeah. Well, I put into the chat, I don't know if everyone's looking at the chat. I knew Fred Small before he became a UU minister, when he was, a folk singer, and one of his early songs, it's called, what's it called? Well, anyway, Love's Gonna something else. Anyway, and he says, we're going to argue, we won't always agree, but we can't let anger blind us to all we can be. He knows how to write a good lyric, and that's, you see why he ended up becoming a minister. And it's a recognition of what it takes to free the mind, right? William Ellery Channing talked about the free mind. It's reading 592 in our gray hymnal. I mean, there's three favorite readings in there. The other is 650 by Robert Weston, Cherish Your Doubt, and I think it's 567 by Sophia Lyon Foz, right? You know, some beliefs are like closed walls and others open up the mind. We bring that dimension when we have this, or we should. And again, I find that hopeful. And again, I'll bring you hope. And then you got to take it, right? We've tried to foster this environment where we take it. What does it take to do that? And well, tune in next month. Again, I think you'll enjoy it. But I have to say, Jack, I loved your musical selections. You've laid down the challenge, Jack. I'm going to have to think hard to get music like that. That was good music. Thank you.
No, all you have to do is get YouTube.
Oh, I have YouTube, but there's so many things out there. By the way, I noticed someone in the chat said, oh, we want to go hear Bill Clinton and everything. It's like, you know, we are competing with the DNC. I do want to make one last pitch. cspan.org. I tune in the next day. There's stuff that doesn't make it into prime time that's really wonderful and very hopeful. Like I said, right from the invocation, fantastic stuff. I find that hopeful. Again, not because, by the way, it's not like, you know, here in Boston, we're all loyal to the Red Sox, although I've never seen a team whose team motto is the other guys suck. That's Boston for you. That no wonder that's the home of the UUA, I guess. But see that, Mike, I love you. But still, you know, in sports, sure, you love the jersey, but I'm not doing this because I'm a lifelong Democrat. I was what we used to call a liberal Republican. And, you know, liberal, moving us in a certain direction. Jackie Robinson supported Nelson Rockefeller for president in 1964. 39% of blacks supported the Republican Party in the 50s. I'm just saying. So again, preview. I hope that's a good teaser for y'all, but we'll see you next month. And now I'll stop talking.
Well, it's easy for you to say, but here where I am, we have the White Sox.
Well, they suck too.
No kidding.
Now that's tough, Jack. I feel bad for you there. Yeah.
The White Sox are a team for whom sucking is the pinnacle of achievement. I think
So
there's something like right now they're 43 games behind first place.
Well,
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
If you're gonna be behind, if you're gonna be behind, be the most behind, be the best. Right? But remember, it was the Cubbies who held the record for the longest dry spell before they won the World Series, and I was very happy for them when they finally put it across. I saw a nod from Alan there. Yay! You know, I want people to.
And the White Sox won too.
Well, yes, and eventually the Red Sox did. And may I say, coming back from being 0-3 against the Yankees in the division playoffs, I'm just saying, oh, was that a comeuppance to those haughty Yankees?
That was caused by a sermon I gave that Sunday morning.
No doubt, God is on our side, right, Rich?
Good to know the cause of these things.
Go to give it again, Richard. We need it.
Never underestimate the power of the pulpit.
Oh,
Well, I
I
want to
just
thank
have,
you again.
yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Matthew, please.
No. I'll save it for next month. That's
Okay.
another teaser. Please show up.
Once again, I want to thank you all for coming. This has been a lot of fun. Wesley, hi, Wesley. You haven't said a word. You want to get a word in before we go?
Oh, I was just thinking it's not necessarily the religions that are, it's the dilemma that they haven't been tried. It's like when that mentioned Western civilization to Gandhi, he said it would be a nice idea. And I think about those kind of things. I was also thinking about, I think this is a Jewish legend. I should know it because I have had there are at least two rabbis in the family, and I even discovered, much to my surprise, there's probably some genetic reason I think this way. Anyway, but that there are so many hidden. There are a number of people, I don't know where the story comes from for sure, that the world stays in existence because of a certain very few number of people. Not just that the rest are forgiven and tolerated and put up with because of these few people who are not known to anyone, who keep the world going. And I like the idea. I suppose I don't really entirely believe it, but I remember when Albert Schweitzer died, because he was part of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, and when I went to Africa single-handedly to fix colonialism, and of course he couldn't. I thought, was he one of the mysterious people? But they're probably better left unknown. So the question is, we may still be propped up by those very few people who keep us going.
It's called the myth of the Lamed Vav, which is the letters in the Hebrew alphabet are also numbers. And there are 36
Yes.
chosen people around the world on whom humanity's survival depends. But even they don't know who they are. So it's a very interesting story. The myth
Can you spell that, Jack? The myth of the what?
Lamed Vav, Lamed, Lamed Vav, V-A-V. The myth of the Lamed Vav.
Those are two letters in the Hebrew alphabet.
Right.
Oh.
Jack, you've reminded me. Did anyone else see that the Reverend Anna Levy Lyons has left UUism to go full on to become a rabbi?
No.
She wrote the book No Other Gods, in which she shows how to reinterpret the Ten Commandments as a progressive manifesto. Yeah. It was Richard who forwarded me that article, right, Richard? Yeah. And it's like she's saying, no, gotta do this, because she felt she was out of step with her congregation. And so she says, that's it. I'm going full on to this Judaism. Again, interesting, heading for the exits, right?
Yeah.
No, I say, well, I refuse to yield this religion. I refuse to yield it. Come next month, you will join me. You will take up this cause. You will feel good. You will be here ready to fight for it. Ugh.
Matt, what was the book again? No Other Gods?
Yeah, like Thou Shalt Have No Other Gods Before Me.
Okay.
No Other Gods by Anna, which is A-N-E, Levy, L-E-V-Y dash Lyons. And turns out she had to reclaim the name Levy because her father had dropped the Jewishy name to fit in, or because of, anti-Semitism or whatever. I mean, my own father, he says, I remember growing up in Brooklyn, there would be signs in the windows, dogs and Jews not allowed.
Huh.
Okay, well,
Or
dog,
in the,
this is for Jack.
the-
Dogs are trafe. I'm just saying. That was a joke for Jack.
We also haven't heard from Doug.
Wait a
Doug,
minute.
do you want to say anything before we go?
Also, Wesley is trying to say something.
No. Okay. Well, it's been good to have you with us. Wesley, what's on your mind?
Well, actually, I wondered if Doug was from a Universalist family, which is neither here nor there. Because I remember John Parkhurst, who was the Universalist minister.
Yeah, John Parkhurst was
my
my uncle.
Ah,
Yeah, John Parkhurst was my uncle. My father's brother.
Let me all remind you that in the whole history of the United States, there's been one man who was both president and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and he was a Unitarian. So there.
Yeah, but Jack, he also resisted humanism in Unitarianism. That was Taft. He was president of the AUA when the humanists started moving in and sweeping aside the Christian identity.
Yes. He was
and we haven't had a Unitarian president since Taft.
He was also so fat they had to have a special bathtub for him at the White House.
well, Obama's grandmother was a Unitarian, and her funeral was held there. Now, also FDR's mother, who Eleanor hated for a number of fairly good reasons. She had great difficulties with her mother-in-law, but she was properly, when she was married, was a Unitarian Universalist because her father had helped put two small New York congregations together that are actually the ancestors of the Shelter Rock. And I can't think of his name. He was the one after the Civil War who organized the Unitarian Conference, who people thought was altogether too Christian as compared with the having two dueling conferences. But anyway, he was the one who, and he signed, yeah.
Bellows?
Bellows, Henry Whitney Bellows. Yes, that was his name. And he signed their wedding certificate, which was held in the Unitarian Church. So, which at one point was called the Church of the Holy Zebra because of the way it was constructed. But at any rate, it remains in the dining room at the Hyde Park, in Hyde Park. It's in the dining room. I called him up and asked him if he was there, and they told me it was. So that was very interesting.
Jack, say goodbye to us all, will you?
Please, if you want to save the chat, there's a way to do it before we sign off. If you want to see all those interesting links and whatnot. So there's the 3 dots up top of the chat if you want to save it all. Because once you sign off, you can't get it no more. But it's been great. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Richard.
Goodbye, everybody.
Yep.
Oh, I want to let people know I put that book in the chat, No Other Gods, the Amazon URL.
Don't buy from Amazon. Boo, Amazon.
Well, at least you can see the description of it, the book summary and such.
Indiebooks.com will steer you to your local retailer. There you
Richard,
go.
thanks for your help. See you soon.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone.